So what are the sources of all learning? What are the sources of the law in this country in ancient time? Suppose today, if you ask a student of law, what are the sources of law, various laws that govern all of us? We will say first you have the constitution. The second source of law, laws enacted by the parliament and the state legislatures on the basis of the power given by the power given under the constitution. Then the third source of law are the rules or executive instructions issued by the government in exercise of the power conferred by acts of parliament or acts of legislature. The fourth source of law is the interpretation given to these laws by the courts. So today in modern day jurisprudence, you formulate four sources of law, namely the constitution, the acts of state legislatures, the rules issued by the executive, and the interpretation of law given by the courts. These are the four sources of law in modern day. So what were the sources of law in ancient times? I have told you about these 14 branches of learning, of which DharmaShastras constitute one. So what are the sources of learning? There is a shloka in the Manusmriti which says, Veda Akhila Dharma Moolam Smriti Silecha Tadvidam Acharas Chaiva Sadhunam Atmanas Tushtirevacha. Look at the source of law as enumerated by Manu. Veda Akhila Moolam DharmaShastram. Vedas constitute the first, the original source of all laws. Veda Akhila Dharma Moolam. What is the second source of law? Smriti Silecha Tadvidam. These DharmaShastras have yet another name, and the name for DharmaShastras is Smriti. Smriti is what is recited, what is repeated. Shruti is what is heard. Smriti is what is remembered by recitation. So these DharmaShastras, which are called Smritis, they constitute the second source of law according to this shloka. Veda Akhila Dharma Moolam Smriti Silecha Tadvidam. The third source of law is Acharas Chaiva Sadhunam. Sadhus, people who are very learned and the people who are noble. Sadhu means not merely a person who is learned, but a person who is very noble. Because a man may be a very learned man and yet be a crook. He will never be a sadhu, at least sadhus of those days, not sadhus of the modern days. So, acharas chaiva sadhunam, the code of conduct observed by sadhus, men who are learned and noble, this constituted the third source of law. And the fourth source of law is something very, very interesting. What is that? Atmanas Tushtirevacha. A man's own conscience constitutes the fourth source of law. There is no other culture, there is no other civilization in the world which says that a person's own conscience may constitute one of the sources of law. Because you can dupe anybody else but not your own conscience, because if you have a conscience, you know whether what you have done is right or wrong. Therefore, Manu traces these three, four Vedam, Dharma-shastras, then sadhu's conduct, and one's own conscience as the sources of law.